So recently, an anime YouTuber named Noralities has been making waves and getting a lot of backlash. Initially for her questionable takes on Re:Zero, and now for what she has to say on Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid and cancel culture. I'd like to say that I am very proud of the anime community for keeping their complaints mostly civil, and to please keep it that way. Do not be mean to Noralities, because this will be used against you. I know some people have given up all pretense of civility because of past incidents, but please don't. This is a fresh start, and I'd like it if we could keep things civil. That said, most of these responses are over an hour long, and honestly, there's a question about them that I think needs answering. Why is the anime community so determined to defend lollies? So, I'd like to try and explain that. So in one of Noralities' videos, she talks about child-coded characters, and aims to explain how Ilulu from the upcoming season of Dragon Maid is child-coded. In the following video, she offers a response to some of the criticisms she received, the main concern being that sexualized depictions of childlike characters is very, very not okay. So why has the anime community leapt to its defense? Well, if you've been into anime and video games as long as I have, chances are you have seen multiple instances of things getting censored in the name of stopping pedophilia, and frequently, this is where even the staunchest free speech advocates will make an exception. This makes sense because pedophilia is pretty much the worst crime a human being can commit. Sexually abusing a child ruins not only the life of that child, but frequently victims of sexual abuse grow up to be broken people who harm others and may even become murderers or molesters themselves, creating a horrible cycle of abuse that must be stopped. If editing a character's outfit or cutting a scene from a game or anime can stop this cycle, then it's totally worth it, right? The problem is twofold. One, that we have no proof that this will have any effect, and two, that the definition of what counts as a lolly or a child is too often up for debate. Did you know Ayane from Dead or Alive was only 15 until DOA 5? Yet Marie Rose is totally 18. Misty in the Pokemon manga Dengeki Pikachu is only 12, yet looks like Faye Valentine with a side ponytail, more curves, and less clothes. And need I remind you that pretty much the entire cast of rival schools, including Tiffany, are all high school students and thus underage. Why does this keep happening? Easy. Most of this media is aimed at a teenage demographic. And in case you didn't know, teenage boys like big anime titties. Now, it's here you'll notice that Noralities didn't really bring up characters like this. She brought up Kana, who, yes, looks like a child, but wait. Wasn't this supposed to be about how Ilulu was child-coded? Yet, Noralities spends the entire video focusing on how Kana is child-coded. And then, when she finally gets to Ilulu, basically just goes, oh, Ilulu's the same thing.
Kana's eyes are significantly lower down. Her face shape is round and less defined, which is a feature that signifies that she is a child because she was designed to look like a child. And if we do the same for Ilulu, we can see that she's proportionally the same as Kana.
And yet, La Brava isn't, for some reason?
I tried this with La Brava, and yeah, she's not even 4 heads tall. But again, La Brava is in the text inarguably an adult character with an adult's voice and mannerisms, while Kana and Ilulu are not, and they talk like children.
And yet we never cover the elephant tits in the room, Uzaki-chan, a 20-year-old college student who is short and busty, and thus much of Twitter continues to throw a fit about her, declaring her show to be child pornography despite involving neither children nor pornography. And that's a damn problem. If we're willing to bend the rules of what counts as child pornography so far that it includes that, then what's off limits? What's not CP at this point? I know it turned out to be a bit of a nothing burger, but some of the people trying to get the game Sense pulled from the Nintendo store tried to claim it was CP despite once again involving no actual children or things that even look like children and being non-pornographic. This is a point of major concern for me, that we cast the net of what counts as a child far too wide, and Ilulu definitely falls under this net. I'll be blunt, I have a huge soft spot for short, cute, busty girls, be they short stacks or busty lollies or some kind of sexy hobbit dwarf race. Combining the cuteness of a lolly with the over-exaggerated adult features creates a sort of impossible creature only plausible in the wild realm of anime. Considering pedophilia is all about being attracted to children and their lack of development, I have a hard time viewing a character like Ilulu as problematic, and I am going to need some very heavy convincing, which Noralities fails to provide. But funny thing, I'm making this whole huge argument about how dangerous getting bent out of shape over lollies is, and I'm not even talking about actual lollies. I'm talking about the overwhelming amount of collateral damage caused by wishy-washy definitions of what counts as underage or a lolly. Getting back to actual lollies though, I've heard some interesting defenses. Some just like them because they're cute, others find them empowering because of their own abuses they suffered, which is definitely a twist I didn't see coming. It's also important to remember that lollies don't just come from horny men. The infamous Kodomo no Jikan was produced by a woman who claimed it was actually partially autobiographical. So that's a thing. Even amongst people who really don't like lollies though, much of the anime community, especially the older ones, are rightly traumatized by the specter of censorship. Anime has repeatedly been altered for Western audiences throughout history, giving us a warped or inferior version of a show or product. And this has happened so much in the anime community that any sensible anime fan would say, no, don't censor the lollies because I know you'll take it even further, because they always do. But speaking personally, Noralities is right on one thing. I am desensitized to lollies. I've been watching anime since I was very young and for a very long time, to the point where when people freak out about lollies, it actually seems weird to me and I don't understand it. When I see a lolly panty shot, I'm not aroused. My brain just shrugs it off as anime gonna anime. Based on some of the responses I've seen to Noralities videos, I'm clearly not alone on this. And Noralities sees this as a big problem, that we should be more disturbed by sexualized lollies rather than just shrugging them off. But as one of these lolly shruggers, it does always catch me off guard because I frequently enjoy anime that features some lolly nonsense and it just flies right over my head. I enjoy the rest of it, so when a person gets stuck on the lollies, makes the entire review about freaking out about the lollies, it annoys me and I wind up going, yeah, I know, I get it, get over it, let's move on. Yet, despite being unfazed by lollies, when I see actual children in way too tight of clothes, I wince. I am not desensitized to this in real life, because there's a big difference between actual children and anime lollies. Thus, there are people that firmly believe that anime lollies are harmless and have no adverse effects on real life. Some people have mocked this, pointing out the example of Jaws as how fiction can affect reality, and how people who think fiction doesn't affect reality are stupid. I'd like to speak on their defense. The idea that fiction has no effect on reality stems largely from past experiences, namely and especially when it came to the moral panics surrounding video game violence. We had people in government freaking out about Mortal Kombat back in the day, and in the early 2000s, we had Jack Thompson, the now legendary lawyer who tried to make every single case about fighting the evils of video games and how they cause violence with such infamous quotes as, "The PlayStation 2's DualShock controller gives you a pleasurable buzz in the back of your hands with each kill. This is operant conditioning, behavior modification right out of B.F. Skinner's laboratory." Yeah, so he's nutty, but he spent so much time declaring that Grand Theft Auto makes you a serial killer, and so many people played Grand Theft Auto and never felt like killing anyone that they just said, "You're an idiot, it's just a game, it doesn't affect reality." And that was the simplest and easiest explanation. People just rolled with that. However, as Noralities points out, fiction does affect reality. After the release of Jaws, there was an increased fear of sharks, and sharks were hunted and finned in greater numbers. That's true. But wait, why did Jaws star a shark in the first place? Oh right, because there was already a fear of sharks. Sharks have been used to represent the terrors of the deep for hundreds of years. Think of the cliche in pirate movies of walking the plank into a group of circling sharks, for example. Yes, Jaws may have increased fears, but the fears were already there. That's why Jaws even exists in the first place. Alternately, though, One might argue that Jaws also made sharks cool and caused people to further research them and would inspire future shark hype, like street sharks, Shark Week, and large-breasted anthropomorphic shark women, which would cause people to further research and fall in love with sharks. 101 Dalmatians caused people to buy Dalmatians, which was a terrible idea, but not the goal of the movie. Lassie did the same thing for collies. Heck, the Taco Bell commercials caused an increase in Chihuahua sales. Was that the goal? No, the goal was to sell tacos, not Chihuahuas. Fiction does affect reality, but never in a clear, obvious one-to-one manner. I'm avoiding the example of Birth of a Nation because I find it incredibly suspicious, yet too politically charged to actually get clear and unbiased answers on. But yeah, that was literal propaganda. I don't see Dragon Maid's central message or goal be to get people to go after children, and I do not see how it could have that effect. It seems like a big stretch. And while correlation does not equal causation, people have noticed that as video games have gotten more popular, violent crimes have gone down. The theory being that, coupled with improved policing, video games worked as an outlet for these potential violent urges. Grand Theft Auto may have reduced the amount of violence in the world. And a friend of mine informs me that some studies even show D&D, which in previous moral panics was believed to cause devil worship and suicides, actually caused a reduction in suicides. But this is where things get interesting because of what Noralities found.
To everyone who commented about the sexualization of child characters in anime having no real-world harm and that it's just a part of Japan's culture, I would like to inform you of the increasing rates of child abuse, which includes sexual abuse, that Japan has been experiencing, reaching record-breaking heights for the last 29 years in a row, all while American child abuse rates have been on the decline.
Whoa! Hold up. That's a bombshell. I've never heard of this. Has the anime community been hiding this information? No. Noralities is playing word games. If we look at the data, you will notice that while child abuse is a big problem in Japan, sexual abuse is a very, very tiny portion of that, and has not seemed to have changed in any meaningful way over the years. Listen to what Noralities said. Child abuse, including sexual abuse, has been on the rise. Indeed, child sexual abuse is included in this chart. This statement is not technically wrong, but it is interpreted as child sexual abuse is on the rise in Japan when this does not seem to be the case. It's mostly psychological abuse that has gone up. Care to tell me how loli isn't cause psychological abuse? You know, I'd actually like to add something in here while editing. Found this comment from a Japanese dude on another video criticizing Noralities, and they go into detail pointing out that the Western perception of Japan equals anime is quite wrong, as otaku make up a very small portion of the Japanese population, that they would not have any effects on such graphs. They also explain that what they see happening is a rise in immature parents who are not ready to raise kids and frequently leave them in hot cars while they go off to play pachinko. This counts as child abuse and has even led to kids dying. That's some serious bullshit, and those parents should be ashamed. But that has nothing to do with anime and lollies. This alone is pretty infuriating. It's a massive bombshell that much of Noralities' second video is built upon. This idea that there is a serious chance that lollies are causing an increase in child abuse in Japan. Finding out she's manipulating the data harpoons the whole thing. And that's not the worst of it. Nora, if you would.
And also, none of this matters anyway, because guess what I found out after making the Dragon Maid video? The author, Cool Kyo Shinja, has drawn at least 5 comics of child porn, so there is literally no point in defending this person. I'm not going to pretend I know what this guy's deal is. I don't know what's in his heart. But the mere sexual attraction to children is enough to be classified as a pedophile. It does not matter if they have actually engaged in a criminal act or not.
Wow. So Nora is pretty much just flat out accusing the author of Dragon Maid of being a pedophile. Just one problem here. There are no children in that hentai. The characters are a college student and a college dropout who draws hentai. They are very clearly coded to be adults in the same way La Brava was. They may look childlike due to the art style, but they do not behave like children. This is another bombshell that's just flat out false. If you want to get technical, looking up some pages online, it's clear that the girl in this story has a thing for young boys, and likes to pretend the guy is a child in their roleplay sessions, which, coupled with how he's drawn, does make it a bit Shota-esque. But the character is also very much written as a young adult with a job that goes on business trips, and also finds the girl's roleplay ideas weird, which is part of the humor. It also highlights the vagueness that anime and fiction introduce to these scenarios. When literally anything is possible, applying the rules of real life to them is very difficult. Crap, I haven't even begun to ask what the rules are when it comes to magical age changes. Those were pretty common back in the 80s. Anyway, we already covered how at no point does she adequately explain how the boobdonkulous Ilulu is child-coded. But she does point out that in the manga, Ilulu's human form is described as being 16-ish, which is underage, but not in Japan. Many people brought up Japan's age of consent, which is a waking nightmare to explain, and Noralities does tackle it. But from the angle of how this does not mean that a 13-year-old is really legal in Japan, it even brings up how Japanese students petition to raise the age of consent. To what, you may ask?
In November 2020, students submitted a petition to raise the age of consent from 13 to 16, which received 40,000 signatures.
Oh, right. 16, huh? Where have I heard that number before? And speaking of 16-year-olds like Ilulu's humanoid form, people soon found out that Noralities used to draw lewds of the My Hero Academia boys who are in the very same age bracket. Even a little younger, I hear. Now, wait just a damn minute, Nora. What the fuck are you doing? You're gonna sit here and lecture us about how we're a bunch of pedos for liking the tiny big-boob dragon girl, yet you're gonna draw Bakugo lewds? Look, here's the thing. Nora, you did nothing wrong. I fully support your right to lewd the Hero Aka boys. I mean, they're ripped. If you're into boys with literally explosive personalities, be my guest. But don't try to act like it's some big moral issue when the genders are flipped. Hero Aka is a good example of the final problem we need to discuss: muddying the waters. See, I also enjoy some My Hero Academia. First shonen series I'm really enjoying and sticking with. But I keep hearing it has a terrible fandom, and one of the major issues of the Hero Aka fandom is that it's full of pedophiles. Whoa, is this true? And then I remember the artists I follow, which got their big-boobed older froppy pics taken down on claims of supporting pedophilia. And that there are all these people who whinge about being attracted to My Hero Academia characters makes you a pedophile, and suddenly the water is muddied. I don't know if there's an actual problem of pedophiles with older fans wanting to hook up with underage kids, or if it's just people throwing a fit over froppy lewds. That's dangerous, by the way, and Noralities knows it.
Or fans of Voltron sending death threats to the cast and writers because of a pairing they shipped between these two characters. The reason being, some fans falsely accused the ship of being pedophilic, which, first of all, I don't think they even had canonical ages at the time, but I think Shiro has been confirmed to be 25 and Keith is 18, which is not what pedophilic means. So to a certain extent, I really understand why recently when people hear something or someone being accused of pedophilia, their first instinct may be to brush it off because the term has been thrown around loosely and incorrectly before. Which, can I just say, makes my job so frustrating. Like, when you hear about someone potentially committing a crime, your first instinct really shouldn't be, well, I bet people are just misinformed and overreacting.
Yeah, Nora, I have the exact same problem. This is not good. Here's the thing. We already have multiple instances of dubious claims of things promoting pedophilia being used to censor stuff. Quite a few years ago, New Zealand banned the OVA Puni Puni Poemi, declaring it to be child porn. While it does involve minors in suggestive situations, oh egad is it not porn. It's a pseudo-sequel to Excel Saga, okay? It's just a weird madcap comedy anime. And while it does indeed have some uncomfortable scenes, the idea that watching this anime makes you a sex offender in New Zealand is completely absurd. More recently, we've had Amazon demanding that certain Amazon shops take down their goods because, and I'm not kidding, Hatsune Miku figures promote pedophilia. Not like weird figures either, regular ass Hatsune Miku figures. There have been numerous instances of non-pornographic Steam games being prevented from release due to people not liking how the characters look. Meanwhile, one particular hentai game, Koikatsu Party, had to censor out its actual gameplay on Steam because it took place in a Japanese high school. Just recently, 2 years after release, Koikatsu Party released a new patch which prevents you from making characters too short or breasts too small, taking customization features away from a game whose #1 purpose is making characters, with many even using it as an art tool rather than a hentai game. They've even released a patch to censor AI shoujo months after release as well, limiting minimum bust size to C-cup and minimum height to 165 centimeters, once again in a game built entirely around its customization options. Fun side note, I knew a guy who did playtesting for Xenoblade Chronicles X. The breast slider was removed from the US release not to prevent people from making breasts too big, but to prevent them from making them too small, as the character might appear lolly-esque if they did. This is why I am concerned. Claims like this have been used to censor things already. This isn't a slippery slope argument because we've already slid too far. So in editing this video and looking back on it, we've been on quite a journey. I really didn't intend for this to be over 20 minutes, but here we are, and I'd kind of like to take a minute to recap where we've been before closing this out. So here we go. We started with a video by Noralities, which claims that the hundreds of years old dragons Kana and Ilulu are actually children because they look, act, and sound like children regardless of their age. She claims these characters are sexualized and that this is problematic. When confronted with people claiming it's just fiction, she shows that fiction does affect reality, and that with rising cases of child abuse in Japan, there is reason to be concerned, and what's more, that the author of Dragon Maid draws CP and should not be defended. I will absolutely concede that Kana is a child and that she is sexualized in the anime, and if that was all the video was about, I would not have bothered. However, I do not agree that Ilulu is a child. The argument is that she is short, has childlike facial proportions, and talks like a child, and the tits are just stapled on as an excuse to make her not a child. I argue that by stapling those tits onto her, they do successfully make her not a child, because now she no longer bears any sane resemblance to a child. I'll concede that she is short and has a childish face, but not that she talks like a child, and in the manga is portrayed as at least being a dating teenager, with her having a crush on a high school boy even. I will concede that I am desensitized to lollies in anime and that this might not be a good thing, and I will also concede that fiction can have an effect on reality. However, the data which shows a rise in child abuse in Japan does not show a rise in sexual abuse, and the manga used as an example of how the Dragon Maid author draws CP does not actually feature any children in it. My main focus, however, was on how fiction provides a great many gray areas when it comes to this stuff, and providing a cavalcade of examples, as well as instances of censorship caused by this. This has been a major concern of mine for years. I was gonna make a video on this anyway, hence all the examples. I feel it is dangerous to cast the net too wide on what should and should not be illegal, and proving my point, I bring up Noralities' old My Hero Academia artwork and how that could be used to declare her a pedophile if someone wanted to cast such a wide net. So let's get serious here and close this out. Here's an uncomfortable question no one wants to think about. Why is CP illegal? The answer is because to produce it, a child must be sexually assaulted and have their life ruined. By consuming CP, you're supporting it, and thus causing more to be produced, and thus causing more children to have their lives ruined. But anime doesn't involve actual children, and thus does not ruin their lives. The argument against it is that it's a gateway drug, and that people who like lolicon will move on to real children. But there is no evidence of this, just an assumption. Friendly reminder, it's possible that a pedophile may enjoy lollies, but not necessarily for someone who likes lollies to actually be into real children. They are not connected. If it were up to me, I'd draw the line at obviously fictional, drawn characters versus real kids. If it's not an actual human being, I think it should be allowed. Why? Because it seems like the most clear line we can draw. I know you'd want to argue in favor of not allowing child-coded characters, but as we've seen, what counts as child-coded is too wishy-washy and up for interpretation. It can and is being used to try and censor media. No. When something is obviously fictional, because I refuse to believe anyone is dumb enough to think an anime character is a photograph of a real human being, then it should be allowed. This would make realistically rendered images a gray zone, and I'm pretty okay with that. Technically, those should be allowed because no real children are involved, but I'm okay with that being dangerous, and renderers needing to do something to make their rendered children obviously fictional, like making them into goblins or something. As for using real children as a reference, well, that's just not possible to determine. We've recently had an incident like this where a person was caught drawing sexualized children and basing them off of actual photographs. But the photos were not sexual in nature, and it was only in the drawings that they became this way. Again, not a thing I'm comfortable with, but it falls well outside the realm of what can and should be policed. Hopefully, I have made my case in a relatively calm and inoffensive manner that I can sincerely hope people take to heart. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.